Welcome, this is Dr. C again. Today we're going to talk about something a little more serious, and we can have a little fun with it as well. It's going to all be educational. You don't realize the number of bacteria that you carry around with you every day. There is no such thing as a totally sterile person out there. In fact, you can't live without bacteria. I know that may be a shock. For every cell in your body, there are at least 10 of these bacteria in your body. And they all have their own genes. We're going to talk about that later, what that may mean to you as well. So, with so many bacteria in your body, what are they there for? Well, are you born with them? Some people are. Soon as you pass through to get birth, through the birth canal, you're going to swallow some of those bacteria. You're going to start colonizing your own gut. Starts way back then. Usually by the age of 2, you have your full complement of bacteria in your gut. Your gut's not the only place, though, that has the bacteria. They have them all over the body. And we'll talk about specific areas of the body and the specific bacteria that you may encounter. The gut, however, is the most prevalent. They estimate roughly about 100 trillion, that's with a T, trillion bacteria in your large intestine. That's a lot of bugs. In fact, it's about 3 pounds. So you're carrying around 3 pounds of bugs in your intestine all the time. I get a kick out of the fact that every now and then they tell you to wash the toxins out of your intestine. Well, what you're washing out is all of the bacteria in your intestine, which you absolutely need. So, shows you where we go and how we think. There's a lot written about the bacteria now, and there's going to be an awful lot more in the next few years. So I think it's time you understand a little bit more about them. The bacteria themselves in the gut are called the microbiota. Microbiota, you'll see that term used. That's all the bacteria, not just in your gut, but also on your body. Let's go through each of the systems in the body with the type of bacteria that you have there, and are they doing you any good or not? There are several types of bacteria. We call some commensal bacteria. They live there. They're not hurting you. You're not hurting them. So they're just there. There's also, in addition to those, there are bacteria that help you. And those bacteria are the good ones, the good bacteria that are in your body. There's also pathologic bacteria, bad bacteria. You don't want too many of those. And fortunately, we don't have too many of them normally in our body, but they're there. And normally the good bacteria are overwhelming the bad pathologic bacteria. We classify bacteria in many ways. I know in medicine we classified them how they reacted to a stain. It's called a Gram stain. They were either positive, in other words, they took up the stain, or negative, they didn't take up the stain. They also classified them medically. They can grow with or without oxygen. We call the ones who needed oxygen aerobic bacteria. The ones who didn't need oxygen, anaerobic bacteria. The last bit of classification is part of what they call taxonomy. How do you officially, scientifically classify all of the different bacteria that are out there, not just in your body, but out there? And so we usually use the genus and the species. We use those two terms. For example, C. diff, Clostridia difficile. Clostridia is the genus and difficile the species. Now, they can be subclassified more than that, but that's what we commonly use, and that's enough. That's enough for now. And that's what I will be referring to with some of these bacteria. Let's go through some of the systems now, knowing that. First of all, let's talk about the skin. Well, the skin has a number of bacteria. And some of those bacteria influence the development of acne, for example. And that's why sometimes a teenager will have to use preparations that have an antibiotic in it as well to counteract the bacteria that are causing the acne. Also, sweat. We have several types of glands in our skin. We have sebaceous glands, oil glands, basically. Occasionally, the little opening can swell shut, the oil accumulates, and can form little cysts. All benign cysts. Occasionally, they'll get infected, and that's when they really stink. But that can cause a problem as well. Also, we have sweat glands all over the body. They're called eccrine, E-C-C, eccrine glands. We also have specialized sweat glands in the hairy areas of the body, like under the arms, in the groins, that type of thing. They produce a little different kind of sweat. Not just plain watery sweat, which has no odor, no odor. This one also has some fatty acids in it. And so the bacteria can get into those glands and cause odor, and it can cause infection. You've maybe, I don't know if you know the term hidradenitis. That's if the glands really get badly infected. They need to be drained, etc. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the apocrine glands, which are the glands under the arms and in the groins. And the apocrine glands that can get infected. They can cause an odor too. And so the odor there is a little more like an onion. Now, some people may like the smell of an onion, but when it gets to the point where it starts to make your eyes water, I don't know about the smell. But nevertheless, it produces that kind of an odor. Interestingly, I was studying a little bit about body odors. What can I do? I'm retired. But, let's read about body odors, for example. We have, as we age, a change. Those fatty acids can cause an odor, a particular odor that occurs only in the elderly. Never found it under age 40. Not that age 41 is elderly. I'm not implying that. But it is specific to the elderly. I don't know if you've ever been called about your odor. Boy, you smell like an old man, or you smell like an old lady. Well, what does that mean? It might mean that you're producing this particular chemical in your skin, and that is presented as this kind of a grassy-like smell. Not necessarily turn you off type of smell, but it's different than what it was when you were younger. Now, you may remember, if you're young enough too, when you were adolescent and the glands were going full gore, you had a particular odor to you. Of course, you had an odor when you were an infant too, but that was due to what's in the diaper more than anything else. The odor, the elder odor, is produced only in the elderly. Fortunately, there is a remedy for it. It's called a persimmon soap. Now, persimmons are fruit. Japan grows the bulk of the persimmons, and they also produce persimmon soap and sell it internationally. It's a good seller for them. So the American persimmon, not as frequently grown, and so they don't have a big market like the Japanese do for persimmon soap. But that persimmon soap neutralizes that nonanol, that chemical which is the odor of the elderly. We're getting into odors here. I don't want to get into that. It's the bacteria that we're interested in. So, what else besides acne and hidradenitis and all is on the skin? Normally on the skin we have several bacteria. In fact, we have on particularly dry skin, you can grow propionocilobacteria, corynebacteria, staph epidermis. You may even have strep aureus on your skin, especially people who work in a hospital environment. They may have strep aureus on their skin. They call that, when it's resistant to antibiotics, methicillin-resistant staph. So all those are on the skin. Let's go from there. The mouth. Now the mouth, human mouth, probably one of the dirtiest places that you can encounter. Not like a houndstooth. Human bites are horrible. They almost guarantee a little infection. It's because of the number of different bacteria that are in your mouth. They claim that we have anywhere between 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria in our mouth. Unbelievable numbers. And that includes some strep, lactobacillus, a number of different bacteria in the mouth itself. Of course, a lot of the bacteria in the mouth is predetermined by your diet as well. And so if you do have an issue, it may be a sensible thing to change your diet to try to decrease that amount of bacteria. The saliva that we have in our mouth is very helpful. People who have trouble with the bacteria in the mouth usually have a dry mouth. Now, it may not be your fault. You could be asthmatic and you're using an inhaler. That inhaler dries your mouth. You also may be unfortunate and you have one of these diseases that causes a dry mouth as well. So you need to hydrate that mouth. Normal people produce roughly about 1 liter of spit. Well, saliva, spit. About 1 liter a day. And you swallow it. So you're swallowing those bacteria as well. At any rate, what can you do about odor in the mouth? Halitosis. Good dental hygiene, number one. That is probably the most important of all of the things you can do. Your diet, as I said, have also something to do with it. If you're eating a lot of garlic, eating a lot of onion, a lot of these odoriferous I guess you can call them vegetables, then you're going to have to put up with some halitosis as well. Smokers, horrible halitosis. But the major thing is good oral hygiene. Okay, so that's the mouth. What about the nasal cavity? There's bacteria everywhere. In your nose, we have 3 different types of bacteria that we can culture. Those corynebacteria, staph, epidermidis, we can culture those from the nose. In fact, when they're looking for people, for example, hospital workers, say there's an outbreak of methicillin-resistant staph, they're going to culture your nose. That's where they would find that Staph aureus, the bad staph. What can you do about that? Keep hydrated. If you have a dry nose, hydrate. Use a saline spray. Keep it hydrated. Okay, What else? Let's take the skin further down. The belly button. Now, there's some people who really focus on the belly button. We always made a joke of the belly button in medical school and all. And I think a lot of people still do. Do you have an innie? Do you have an outie? What difference does it make? Makes a difference. Number one, if you got an outie, you got a chance, that's a hernia, you got a chance that could get caught out. On the other hand, if you have a deep innie, you're collecting the lint in there. I remember one guy who was collecting lint, made a whole jar of the damn stuff. What did he use it for? I don't know. He just collected belly button lint. Well, good for him. But you can grow bacteria in there as well. So, the prevalent type of infections that you can get there usually are related to staph. Usually, but not always. You can also get Clostridia in your belly button. Clean it out, little Q-tip in there when you take a shower. Make sure that belly button stays good and clean. Okay. Our skin doesn't just stay there. It does fight these infections. It also has stuff that can kill the microbial infections as well. For example, a little more acid. Your sweat, for example, is a little acid. And that acid does help to kill the bacteria. And so we do have those on our skin, and we do have something that fights the bacteria naturally anyway. But basically, good hygiene is the best. I would avoid antimicrobial soaps. I know that there are some soaps that put the antibiotic right in it. Please avoid those. They work for a while, but then the bacteria change very quickly, and they quickly become resistant to that soap. And besides, if you're going to kill off all the good bacteria, whatever bad bacteria you may have on your skin then may take over. Don't use antibiotic soaps. Okay, let's go on. Let's say that you got smelly feet. What's causing that? It's the bacteria on the skin that infects the sweat. And there's a lot of sweat glands on the feet, a lot. There are some people sweat more than others. They call that hyperhidrosis. You sweat, a lot of sweat. They are more prone to get the infections and cause odor. Some people say that it's because of candida, a fungus. And that can cause a little bit of odor, but nothing like what the bacteria can do. Keep the feet good and clean. Use cotton socks. Make sure you dry out your shoes every day. Simple things. Okay. I'm going to talk mostly now about the gut. Why? Because that's got the bulk of the bacteria in your body. Remember, 100 trillion bacteria just in that large intestine alone. Your stomach usually doesn't have any. If it does, it may get H. pylori. Remember I told you about the taxonomy, the genus and the species? Helicobacter. Okay, that's the bug that can get in, causes peptic ulcers, can cause some bleeding. It also can be, if it's chronic, it can cause possible gastric cancer as well. Normally, the gut is sterile, the stomach is sterile. As you go down, small intestine, the first part of the small intestine usually doesn't have much. Down towards the end, when you get down in the vicinity of the appendix and all, then you may get some bacteria, refluxes back from the large intestine. But it's the large intestine, by and large, that has all these bacteria. What's their purpose? What do they do in there? What the heck do you need them for? Well, you need them for several things. They turn the food that you eat into short-chain fatty acids, fuel. You absorb the fuel that you need. You need glucose, yes. You also need these short-chain fatty acids. It's the bacteria that does that in your body. Usually, it's the lactobacillus in that large intestine. What else do the bacteria in your intestine do? Well, they do produce vitamin B, usually biotin, and vitamin K. It comes from the bacteria that are in your gut. What else can they do? Well, they keep the pathologic bacteria at bay. So normally, you have normal bowel habits. It's because you have normal bacteria in your gut. Anything else that it does? Yes, they produce serotonin. Serotonin is that feel-good hormone. Produces 95% of the serotonin in the body. That goes right up to the brain where it acts, makes you feel better. So those bacteria are really helping you. You don't want to change them. They change enough as we age, but still with the same relative numbers compared to, say, the pathologic bacteria. Now, what can we do to screw them up completely? We can kill them. If you take an antibiotic, for example, that kills bacteria, the bad bacteria could take over. That's the one indication to use a probiotic. What else? Chronic diarrhea. People who have Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease with diarrhea. Because there's two different types of irritable bowel, constipation, diarrhea. If you have the diarrhea type, you're getting rid of those bacteria all the time. And so that can cause an imbalance in the gut as well. So those are the things that you can do. Those are the things that are in there. That's what they do. They're very beneficial for us. You don't fight them. You're not going to change things by taking probiotics all the time. Keep your own bacteria. Don't fight them. Okay. That's the gut. Talk to the women for a moment. There are certain vaginal bacteria that are there too. And normally, they're living in symbiosis and there's no problems. If you get a decrease in the vaginal bacteria, then the pathologic bacteria can take over. That's when you begin to get the odor. That's when you need to take an antibiotic, get rid of the bad bacteria, and then maybe try to replenish the good bacteria in the vaginal tract. What other areas have it? Well, believe it or not, there's also in the urethra. Now, in the women, the urethra is very short. In the male, it's a bit longer. And there are bacteria there as well. Usually not a big problem. But if you get irritated in the urethra, you get the feeling that you got to go all the time, 3-4 times an hour sometimes. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. That's usually a urethritis, infection in the urethra. Again, why did it happen? You had to introduce pathologic bacteria in there, and that's usually when you get the urethritis. A catheter, for example. Catheters are notorious for causing infections in the urethra and in the bladder as well. And so you got to be careful. Check your urine after you've had any type of instrumentation going into the bladder area. Even in the lung, we have bacteria as well. Usually, we have our own natural defenses that fight these bacteria. If you're a smoker, however, a lot of those you might say combat soldiers, the little cilia in the cells in the lung, die off. Now you can't fight it as well. You can't get rid of the bacteria as well. And so you could wind up with a significant, not just bronchitis, a significant infection, like a pneumonia, for example. So bacteria are in the lungs as well. So basically, we have bacteria all over the body, and you can't live without them. So, knowing that, what type of things would you take a probiotic for? We mentioned if you have an antibiotic that wipes out your own bacteria. Number 2, chronic laxative use. You shouldn't have to take a laxative every day. It's not helping your gut at all. Try to get off of it as best you can. Eat more fiber. Fiber is very good for you. Number 3, you may have a problem with one of the diarrheal diseases like colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, colitis, irritable bowel, one of those diseases which produces diarrhea. And so you're going to get rid of your good bacteria all the time, and then eventually you're going to reach a point where the bad bacteria take over. Unfortunately, that's usually the Clostridia difficile. There you have to have an antibiotic to get rid of that. And you have to take a probiotic under those circumstances. Okay. Certain foods do help. Things, for example, fermented foods are very good. They do help to promote the bacteria in your gut. And so fermented food, even if you use beer, wine, sauerkraut, kimchi, there's a number of different fermented foods that are very good for you. Not that you should go and have a fermented food diet. I'm sure somebody will come up with a fermented food diet, but they're good for you to take in moderation. Okay. With that, I think we're running a little now towards the end. And I want to thank you for listening to all of my ranting about all of the bugs in your body, the odors in your body, and I hope you have a very nice day. Thank you. Goodbye.